Hi friends, Mindy here. I have a quick process video for you today. I'm going to be setting up my journal for Trusting a Good God from Bythewell4God. And I'm going to be creating a little journal using a box, and I'm going to be using some of the fabric that was released this month. So this is one of the Spoonflower fabrics, I think, that was released. And I am going to use this for my cover. But I want my journal to be a little bit, I think, wider than what this will allow for. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to cut this in half, and then I'm going to use a different fabric that I had in my stash. This actually came from my A House of Books subscription. This was a little remnant fabric that came in there. And I think I'm going to use this fabric to kind of cover my spine so that I can make it just a little bit bigger. These are 10 by 12 in size. And so I just want my journal to be a little bit bigger than that will allow. So I am going to use this box. I'm going to also, I have some heat and bond, just like, you know, iron on adhesive basically. And so that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to do that off camera. I'm going to go iron this onto my fabrics, and then I will cover my journal cover here. So I'm using this box just like always. I joke a lot that, you know, no box is safe in my house, because I will use them to create a journal, and I wanted just one that had a little bit of a sturdier feel. I've done a few recently that were just cloth covers, or like I covered in a mailing envelope. There's all kinds of different things that you can do, but I want to have just a little bit more stability for this particular journal. So I opened up the seam on this journal, and then I'm going to just cut off all of this, the excess here, and I'm going to utilize the fact that this has a spine on it. That's why I chose this particular box, because it has a spine that's about it's about an inch and a half. So it's going to be good for the size that I want to create today. And then that gray fabric will just kind of wrap around the outside. So I am going to trim this down, cover this, and I'm going to iron that adhesive on to the back, and then create this journal, but I will put you on fast forward. Okay, so I'm just using my Tim Holtz ruler because it has a steel edge in the one side of it and an X-Acto knife. And I'm just kind of lining this up around with the seams, and then I'm going to go through here and trim off all of these little flaps, and then what's left over is going to be the size of my journal. I'm not going to trim it down any further than that. I think it ends up being roughly 5 by 7 and a quarter, something like that. You could obviously trim it down to whatever size you want to. I'm also turning the box basically inside out because I don't know how thin that gray fabric is, and I don't want that red from the Duncan Hines thing to be shining through. So I just did it this way to have a really neutral background. I'm just kind of showing you how it's going to wrap around. So I ironed this heat and bond on the back of both of these fabrics here. You can see I got a little thread under there, but it's going to be fine. It won't show. And I'm just going to trim off some of the excess heat and bond that was sticking over the edge. Ideally, you would do it like this, where you know, you have the heat and bond in the middle of the fabric, and then you can just trim it down. But because I wanted to use every inch of that Bythewell4God fabric, I ended up having to do it kind of the opposite way. So whenever you do that, I just make sure to put some cardboard down, and, you know, to catch all of that excess adhesive. So now I'm just going to use my rotary cutter here, and again, my steel edge Tim Holtz ruler here, and cut this piece in half. So I want to make sure that I can obviously wrap this fabric around to the inside of the cover, just like you would do with a paper, if you were covering it in, you know, some kind of pattern paper, which is another option. You could certainly do that. I just wanted to use this fabric. So I'm going to go about this basically the same exact way as I would covering any of the other journals. I have plenty of tutorials on how to cover a journal. If you're interested, I will link maybe my journal playlist down below if you're interested. But you can kind of see what's going to happen is this is going to kind of go almost right up to the spine, and then this gray piece is going to wrap a little bit on the front around the spine and then to the back. So I'm just trying to kind of get an eye for how much of this gray fabric I want. In the end, I thought I wanted this wide bit, but then I ended up deciding to take about 1/2 inch off of that, just because I didn't want it too far over on the cover. So again, I'm just going to use my same ruler here and my rotary cutter. I'm just making sure that it's going to wrap all the way around. And I forgot to say, I'm working on a self-healing mat, so I can do this. Otherwise, you'd obviously want to put down something to protect your surface when you're using these blades, but I'm just working on a surface. So this is what it looks like after I have ironed it on. I have other videos where I've shown that process with a little craft iron, so I just did not do that this time. And then you can see here on the front, I got my fabric here a little bit crooked. And so I'm just going to fix that by adding this trim. This is some trim that I got at Hobby Lobby. I love it. This actually ends up being like the very last of this. I have just this little bit left over, and I have used this entire roll. So it's time for me to go to Hobby Lobby and get some more, I think, because I used another one of my favorite rolls the other day. So I'm just going to glue this down with some adhesive. You could use Fabri-Tac. I'm using Helmar 450 Quick Dry. They're about the same difference. This just dries really, really quickly. So I'm gluing this down, and then I'm going to glue it on the back side and then wrap it around to the inside of my covers. This way I can just make sure that everything is nice and secure. And then while this is drying, I'm going to cut my pieces for the inside. Now, you could cover the inside in fabric. Certainly you could. I decided to cover the inside with paper. So I pulled out 2 of the pattern papers from the kit, and I'm just kind of getting an eye for how I want them to fit on here on the inside so that it covers everything up nice and neatly. And then I'm going to trim those down. You could even do 3 different fabrics if, like 2 on the front and the back, and then 1 in the middle if you wanted to. But I'm just going to make sure that these pieces overlap just a little bit. So I only had to use 2 pieces of pattern paper, and it will cover that entire section. So I'm using this is scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive. It's a super strong adhesive, and I'm going to cover the entire back of this pattern paper from Bythewell. I did 2 kind of next to each other, and then I came to the other edge, and it's not, I have that one little itty bitty section that doesn't have any adhesive, but it's going to be fine. So I just did that to both pieces, and now I'm going to put them on the inside of my cover. So the fabric that I used, that gray fabric, is actually a little bit thicker than the other fabric. So this creates a little bit of an issue for me here when I'm trying to fold this spine with this paper in there, but we'll get to that in a second. So I'm just kind of positioning these, getting an eye for where I want them to go. And then whenever I'm using double-sided adhesive like this, I like to kind of take the outer 2 and kind of make little wings. I don't pull the release papers off completely. I just pull them down just a little bit. So I can use those as kind of handles, to kind of move the paper around, because once this is stuck down, it's stuck down. It's really, really strong adhesive. And then once I get it where I want it, then I can just kind of touch it down and then pull that release paper the rest of the way. And I'm making sure to go through over this with my bone folder. And you can see here, this is what I was talking about, because I have that paper and that fabric. This crease is is hard to get my journal to fold again. So I'm just taking my bone folder, just really gently going back and forth, back and forth. I don't want to tear the paper. So I'm just going back and forth along that crease, just kind of working that until I can get it so that I can fold it. And then going again back around with my bone folder, making sure, especially those areas around the lace, that's really tucked down well. So then I just did the same thing to the other side. Same thing again with the bone folder in the crease, just making sure that spine is going to be able to close. And then I even went over the outside with my bone folder, and then you can see how my cover ends up. So I have some sheets of, this is Bristol Vellum Smooth paper. This is a heavyweight paper. So I'm going to cut, I think I did 8 sheets of this. So they're like 9 by 12 I think. So I cut them in half, and then I'm going to be folding them in half. So I'm going to have 8 pages. So I'm going to end up with 4 signatures. So I went ahead and cut those down, and then I scored them because this paper is pretty heavy duty. And then now I'm just making my signatures. I only have 2 pages in each signature. Like I said, this paper is pretty thick, but it's going to stand up to a lot of wear and tear for this month. And I'm going to do a twine binding. I've done this on my channel before, but I'm using some hemp cord that I have, but it's kind of thin. And so I'm actually going to double it up for this process. So you start out with on the outside of this spine, and then you kind of wrap it around for however many signatures. In this case, I have 4, but I'm doing it 8 times because I'm going to double it up, like I said. So, and then you leave a long tail on the outside. So you have one going up over the top and one coming out down from the bottom. And here I'm just going to go through now and make sure that I have 8 threads basically on the inside that I'm going to, group in 2s. And then I'm make sure that everything is nice and neat. Nothing's crossed over one another. This took me a few minutes because this hemp cord is just a little bit fiddly. But it was the one that I felt like I had that matched the best. So now I'm going to take this section that's coming up from the top and the section that's coming from the bottom, and I have one in each hand, and I'm going to cross them over themselves. And this part is really important. And then you kind of hold that in place and slide that one on the left side back underneath and kind of around. And now you can tie a knot, and it's just going to pull everything nice and neat in that one point. Now you could do this kind of up at the top. You can do it down, more toward the middle if you want to, even at the bottom if you wanted. I'm doing it more about a third of the way down from the top. That's just kind of where I like to do it. And then I'm just tying a knot, and now I'm going to go in here and make sure that these are kind of evenly spaced. And then I'm going to trim that down a little bit, and I'm actually going to put some beads here on the end. These are some beads that I had in my stash from jewelry making days, and then a couple of paper beads as well. And now I'm just going to slip my little signatures in here. I'm leaving everything loose because I feel like this is going to be easier to work with these pages because I can pull them in and out as I go through the study this month. So I'm just going to slide those in there, and that is my completed journal. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. You can see I had one of my pages kind of fall out there, but anyway, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and until next time, bye-bye.